Hello and welcome back to Mama Diva Drama. I am Milan, your hostess, and we're having another spa day and we're going to talk about my son's birth story. I'm really excited. Okay, I am so excited for the spa day. Girl, I need it. So if you're watching this at home and you're feeling like you need a spa day, you need to treat yourself, then break out those face masks, break out those salt scrubs, exfoliate, bubble bath, glass of wine, or if you're like me and you don't drink alcohol, then fun mug. It's a cat. Meow. And put whatever you want in it. So, oh, it's exciting. Okay, so I'm going to be doing two different things for my spa day today. We're going to do a face mask because my pores, they need cleaning out. Also, these nails, they're looking, I painted them red because I love red and they're funsies, but they're getting kind of chipped, they're getting kind of gnarly, so we're going to clean these off. We're going to buff them, we're going to take care of my nails, and then, but first we're going to do a face mask. So I got my face masks out, and I went through them, and I want specifically to clean out my pores, so I am going in with this let's focus on it, yeah, Innisfree Pore Clearing Clay Mask. So we're going to go in with this because my pores, they need help, they need sustenance, they need to be wakened up. So we're gonna put this on today. I'm gonna show you my t-shirt because I'm rocking the casual look today. This is actually my husband's t-shirt, but check that out. It's Deadpool on a unicorn. I thought it was funny. So we're gonna just dip right into this sucker. So while we're doing spa stuff, I want to tell the story of my baby and how he got born, and he totally would be a guest star in this video, except that he's napping, and Mama needs him to nap. So I'm going to talk about him while he's not here. Okay, so on the day that I went to the hospital to have my itty bitty baby boy delivered, brought into this world, blessings, I was getting induced on my due date, thank heavens, because I was fat and massive and just uncomfortable with swollen feet, and I was ready for my baby to be out. So I was really excited. I remember Sam, my husband, saying on the way there, is like, can you believe this time when we leave the hospital, it's gonna be with the little baby? And it was really surreal. So we get to the hospital, I get to my room, they induce me, they break my water, and so I had some really nasty contractions, and I'm a wimp, so I decided I need an epidural. So I got an epidural, and that was fine, that all went smoothly, and honestly, I was so tired from like all the stuff that was in my system and just from the amount of energy that the contractions took out of me that once I had my epidural and I could finally like relax, I kind of just fell asleep for the morning. So I was there in the morning and I slept like the whole morning. And like obviously the nurses would come in and check on me, but they'd be gone, and then in 5 minutes, I just fall asleep again. Yeah, my mom was there and my husband was there, so I started having contractions, and we were running into a problem when I had my contractions. My baby's heart rate, Atticus, his heart rate would drop, and it wouldn't like plummet, but it would kind of take a little dip, and so the nurses were monitoring me, and so they gave me an oxygen mask so that hopefully the oxygen would help the baby. And they also kept coming in and moving me around. And I didn't feel any of the contractions, but they were steadily getting stronger. And at one point, my contractions were getting really strong, and they were really concerned about the baby's heart rate because it was starting to look like the stronger the contractions got, the more his heart rate dropped. So at one point, I had one contraction that was really, really strong. I had a solid long contraction, maybe about 5 minutes or something, and Atticus's heart rate, it just dropped. And so I was sleepy and drugged up, so I don't remember a lot of like what was going on. All I remember is I'm laying in my hospital bed, and there's two nurses in there with me. Apparently a contraction comes, and suddenly there's 2 more nurses. So now there's 4 nurses, and then there's 2 doctors, and then there's 2 more nurses. And it just felt like every minute more people were coming in, and like sounds were going off and lights were blinking, and I didn't know what was going on. So I was just terrified because it felt like something was really, really wrong. They saw that his heart rate dropped. Anytime I had a contraction, this was a problem, and that was my first really long one. So they decided that I needed to have a C-section. And let me tell you that I'm a huge wimp when it comes to surgery or injuries or anything, just any pain related anything. I'm a huge wimp. So obviously when I was pregnant, I had to do like a lot of mental preparation for childbirth because that's an ordeal. So I had basically just wrapped my mind around the fact that I was going to have to give birth and go through this whole healing process, and I was definitely doing it with an epidural. I was not going to go all natural. There was no way. That's not me. If that's your thing, you are a hero. I don't know why you go through all that pain. I mean, like, I'm sure there's reasons, but I don't get it, and just good on you. I am not that way. It took a lot for me to even get to a point where I was like, okay, I feel confident going into the hospital knowing I'm gonna have to push a baby out of my body. And I did not in any way mentally prepare for a C-section. I felt like I had prepared and researched, and I'd even watched birth videos so I could prepare for a birth. But I did not prepare myself for a C-section. It just didn't even occur to me that, you know, something could go wrong and you could have a C-section. For some reason, it didn't cross my mind. So I was terrified. They started unplugging me and moving my bed. And before they had done this, they were moving me around and trying to reposition me to help the baby's heart rate. And so they had gotten me on all fours, which was hard because I could not feel my legs. They had to move my legs for me. So I'm still sitting like on all fours, and they're moving the bed and they're taking me to the operating room, and I make eye contact with my mom, and I just had tears streaming down my face. I don't think I even said anything. I think she just saw that I was terrified, and she just told me, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. She put on a really brave face. She just said, it's gonna be okay, and I felt myself being carted away, and so I asked, who's coming to the operating room? Can my mom come with us? And they said, your mom can't come with us, only your husband can come. So they're wheeling me down the hallway. As they're wheeling me down the hallway, Sam, my husband, is with me. He is encouraging me along the way, and he's making little comments that, like, you don't have to worry, babe. It's you can calm down. These guys, they know what they're doing. They're professionals. And he kind of pointed out that, like, as we were going, the nurses and the doctors were still, like, cheerful and talking to each other and smiling. He says, that's a good thing. He said, if they couldn't help you and everything, then it would be a much more serious tone. And I did notice that. I noticed, like, okay, people are still talking and socializing. It is like an emergency situation, but maybe not super life-threatening like yet. Basically, they're preventing it from getting really serious and life-threatening. So I kind of tuned into that, and that helped me a lot. I can't talk while I do this part. Okay, so we're gonna let this dry. I am going to remove my nail polish. And so anyways, we get to the operating room. I'm feeling better, but still very, very nervous. Honestly, I was terrified, but not so much for myself, more so for my baby. It's just, I'm sure other moms who have been through C-sections or, situations where your baby was at risk during delivery, at some point you can relate to this, of kind of like this feeling of, I carried this baby for 9 months. I want to meet my baby. I've already bonded with him. I've already fallen in love with him. I nested. I got everything ready. And the idea that this close to the finish line, I could lose him. Sorry. That was terrifying, because I just needed him to be okay. So we get to the operating room and they move me and they lay me down on the table, and laying down on your back 9 months pregnant is horrible. It was awful. It sucked. I was on my back and it felt so uncomfortable because I had this big old weight on me, and I still had the oxygen mask on. And so basically, since I had it on all morning, it had pretty much like dried out my nasal, my throat, like everything you use for breathing. So it was really difficult to breathe. And especially on my back with all that pressure just crushing my organs, it was even more difficult to breathe. And then, you know, they start the surgery, and obviously I can't feel anything. All I remember is just it being so difficult to breathe, my husband leaning over me and reassuring me that everything's gonna be okay. The only part that I remember feeling, and if you're like really squeamish, then skip past this part, is not that bad, is I just remember when they pulled my baby out, I felt this weird like movement and pressure as they pulled him out. I felt them pull my baby out. And so like as soon as I felt that, I was like, he's out, he's okay. I showed him to my husband, and I was exhausted. I was still struggling to breathe. I was still, you know, just like a seal on a beach, just laying in all of my glory. And so they give Atticus to Sam, and Sam's holding him, and he leans him down to me, and I just look over and I see this white, wrinkly raisin, and I'm like, I honestly just kind of think like, oh, good, it's over. But even after they took Atticus out, they gave him to my husband. They cleaned him up really quick, and then his blood sugar was low, so they had to take the baby away, and they had to go take care of him and make sure he was okay. And you know, they stitched me up and sent me back to my room. That was good. The baby was out. He wasn't necessarily in the clear yet because they needed to get him to the NICU. So they needed to get some sugar into his system. So basically what was happening as I was having contractions is he had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. So whenever I had a contraction, basically it was choking him. So thank goodness they got him out. And like obviously with my situation with the cord around the neck, there's like no way to avoid a C-section. It was just gonna happen. And I was very, very shaky, which is very normal after a C-section, but I was shaky for a really long time, which was not normal. So they had to give me like a warm blanket, and my mom kept telling the nurse, I think she needs to see her baby, and I think that will really help. And they were like, yeah, okay, well, we'll get to that. And you know, they were giving me blankets and trying to give me water, and the shaking would not stop. And it was like, I can't really replicate it. It was like my whole body was in seizures, kind of shaking. And my husband told me later that of all of the points at the hospital, the only point where he was actually nervous was at that part when I wouldn't stop shaking. So my mom kept telling the nurses, she needs to see her baby. She needs to see her baby. And finally, they listened. So what they managed to do was they unplugged my bed and everything, and they wheeled me in my big hospital bed all the way up to the NICU, and they got me into the NICU and to my baby. I was still shaking so bad, and I saw him, and the nurse, they were taking very good care of him. He had IVs in him and stuff because he needed his sugar, and she picked him up and she put him in my arms, and she made sure I was able to hold him. And just kind of immediately, my shaking didn't stop, but it went from like a 9 down to a 2. I was still a little shaky, but as soon as they put Atticus on my chest, I just, oh my gosh, I felt 10 times better. And I just looked at him, and that was when I had my moment. I just looked at him and I thought, there he is. This little boy that's been inside of me all of this time. Just looked at him, and I took it all in, and oh, he was so perfect and so small. He was so small. It's funny, I thought he would be bigger because I felt huge, but he was a small little guy. He was so small, and he just fit in my chest. Like there was like a place there made for him already, and he just sunk in, and he just felt like home. I hold him, I would say, for like a good 10 minutes, but they had to take him back, and they had to take me to my room. And it was really hard because the first night he wasn't able to stay with us because they had to regulate his sugar levels. And by the second night, he was able to stay with us. And he was born, I don't remember what time. Am I a horrible mother? I don't remember what time. I think around 4 o'clock in the afternoon he was born. And he was 7 pounds, 7 ounces. So I think pretty average size. I remember that same night that I had him and he had to stay in the NICU, I wanted to go see him again quite a bit later. They had to get me into a wheelchair and wheel me up. And they said, are you sure you want to do this? Because you might experience nausea. You've been through a lot. And I said, I want to see my baby. So they gave me a little vomit bag and they wheeled me to the NICU. And before they gave me the baby, I was like, oh, hang on. And I got sick in the vomit bag. And yeah, but I was still able to hold him and see him again. And that was wonderful. I was just really anxious. I think I pushed myself a little too much because I really, really wanted to see him again. So I probably shouldn't have done that, but I didn't care. Okay, so we have the nail polish off. These buffers are really nice. You just go with like the blue side, then you go black, then you go white, and it kind of just buffs out your nails, makes them really healthy and shiny. Which by the second night, we got him back, and hospitals are rough, and he wasn't breastfeeding at first because he really needed a special formula with a lot of sugar, and other than that, he was really healthy, and I was making a really fast recovery. I was really lucky for someone that went through, you know, a C-section, which is a major operation. I had a very fast recovery. The staff was amazing. The nurses were incredible. I am so grateful to doctors and nurses, and man, am I grateful for Western medicine. And the people who were helping me, they were incredible nurses and doctors, and very attentive, very kind, very patient. Even so, being in a hospital just sucks. It just does. There's no way to fluff it out. So I think that including the delivery day, I think that I was only in the hospital for about 3 days, 3 nights. Yeah, I left really quickly. I just wanted out of there. I figured I would probably heal at home a lot better. I do have a funny story about one of the nights that we stayed there. The first night that we had Atticus with us, and they really need to provide better bedding for spouses and significant others, because my poor husband, he had to sleep on this awful little bench thing. But yeah, he fell asleep, and in the middle of the night, Atticus was crying, and obviously I couldn't take care of him, but my husband, he was out, and I was calling him, Sam, Sam, Sam. And I have a quiet voice, but I was yelling. I was yelling at my husband and he wasn't waking up. So I found a tissue box and I chucked it at him. And I think it like hit him on the leg or something. And it was a tissue box, but it woke him up and he changed Atticus' diaper. But that was funny. These are all buffed. I'm now going to go in with some cuticle oil. I've got this cuticle oil. It's Deep Sea Cosmetics. I have a lot of things from Deep Sea Cosmetics, but just give it a little drop. You can kind of see it on my nail, but I rub it into my cuticle. And this usually helps my cuticles from tearing. A little bit goes a long way. The day that we wanted to leave, we basically asked, like, what's it gonna take for us to be able to leave and go home? They said, well, if we see that the mom is, you know, up and walking around and everything, then we'll feel confident that you can go. Because I was like, I do not want to spend another night here. Just sleeping in a hospital bed is horrible. So I got myself up. You know, it took a while to get kind of like control over my legs back, but once I did, I was up and I was pushing my little baby in his bassinet around the maternity ward. And I was just waddling along. I think I took like, you know, a couple different walks that day. And I was just proving to them that like, hey, I'm ready to get home, go home. I'm ready to be discharged. So I got discharged really, really early because I think at minimum, usually C-sections, they stay for like 4 to 5 days. And I did not stay that long. I was like, I'm out. But yeah, everything was fine. We got him in his car seat fine. And he was just this perfect little bubby. He was so good-natured. He had to get so many shots. But he was such a champ. He barely cried for any of them. His first bath, he was not a fan of, though. So, he was just so perfect. Face mask is off. I'm moisturized. I've got my chapstick on. My nails are looking much better and not as ghetto. Anyways, that's my story. Kind of crazy. A C-section that I was not at all prepared for, but went fine because my doctors are incredible and the nurses were incredible, and my little baby boo, he had a rough start. He kind of had to fight to be here. But you know what? Thank goodness he did, because he is such a joy. And I would do it all again 100 times over if it meant that I could have him. Human emotion, disgusting. But anyways, I'm so grateful for my little boy. If you enjoyed this story or this video, then hit the like button, comment down below if you are a mother and your birth story, or if you are not a mother and you've overheard some crazy birth stories. Tell me about them. I want to hear. Let's share. Let's get open. It's cool. Subscribe if you would like to see more videos of me, this doofus. I upload new videos on Wednesdays, and that's pretty much everything. So thank you so much for watching. That's a wrap on Mama Diva Drama.